It's only been 6 months since Georgia was crowned national champion, but in some ways, it feels like a lifetime ago with all that's happened in another landscape-shifting offseason. But most of the changes we've seen won't affect this upcoming season. And a record-breaking recruiting class can pay dividends right away. And pay is what rubbed Nick Saban the wrong way after Jimbo Fisher and Texas A&M signed, or perhaps bought, the highest-rated recruiting class of all time.
A&M bought every player on their team, made a deal for name, image, and likeness.
NIL made it possible, and the transfer portal made everything even more volatile. The grass not always greener on the other side, but that doesn't mean the money isn't.
This is kind of a keystone move in the transfer portal because so many guys are impacted, so many coaches.
Williams, one of the favorites to win this year's Heisman Trophy. He's behind only Ohio State's C.J. Stroud and last year's winner, Bryce Young. As for the best matchups we'll see this season, we kick things off week 1 with the defending champion Dogs facing their former defensive coordinator Dan Lanning, who's now the head coach at Oregon. Meanwhile, Marcus Freeman is going to have quite the task in his first regular season game as Notre Dame's head coach, as he leads the Fighting Irish into the horseshoe to face the Ohio State Buckeyes. A week later, the Crimson Tide of Alabama will venture into a sea of burnt orange as Nick Saban takes on yet another one of his former assistants in Steve Sarkisian. It'll be the first matchup between Alabama and Texas since the 2009 National Championship, which kick-started Nick Saban's reign of dominance in Tuscaloosa. Then in week 3, Mario Cristobal will face his first test as the main man in Miami, with the Canes traveling to Kyle Field to battle Jimbo and the Aggies. But the potential grudge match for the ages goes down the second weekend of October, as Jimbo Fisher and Nick Saban face off for the first time since Fisher not only ended Saban's unbeaten streak against former assistants, but also since the two exchanged pleasantries in the offseason.
We built him up to be the czar of football. Go dig into his past. Some people think they're God. It's amazing.
And it wouldn't be a college football season without the annual rivalries that not only make the game what it is, but shape the playoff landscape. With the season right around the corner, the focus shifts from the future to the here and now. The drama is building. The excitement is palpable. It's almost time for college football kickoff.
And we are back. We have made it to week 1, getting picks from some of the most notable games. We're going to go through every ranked game, but these are some of the notable ones. We've got Thursday and Friday, a couple of ranked ones there. Pitt opening up its season post Kenny Pickett hosting West Virginia, Central Michigan at 12th ranked Oklahoma State. Mike Gundy needing just one more win to hit 150 in his career. Let's welcome in our quarterbacks, Brady, Quinn, and Danny Kanell. Congratulations. We've made it to week 1. We are very excited to be here. We did do picks for week 0. Brady, your record is 5-2.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Danny, we're going to work on this. You're 2-5. Like, let's get things going here, right?
I feel like I should get an assist, Danny, for talking you into North Texas, because you weren't going to make a pick in that game, and you ended up taking North Texas. True.
And actually,
week
now
0
we're...
doesn't count.
Go ahead, Danny.
Week 0 doesn't count. That's not a real week.
Wow.
That's like preseason.
You know how disrespectful that is to Pat Fitzgerald and Scott Frost and that great game that we saw in Dublin, Ireland, where the internet went down. Now they're just giving away beer. Northwestern comes right back after the onside kick. So, look, do not put down week 0 of college football. It was fantastic. I loved every minute of it.
Yeah, not only are we now counting week 0, we are also counting your best bet. So now it is 6-2 and 2-6 to spread things out a little bit there. All right, let's get into week 1 here. West Virginia at 17th ranked Pitt. Got a couple of quarterback movement here. Georgia transfer JT Daniels now at West Virginia. UCS, I can't talk right now. USC transfer.
Yeah.
Eden Slovis now at Pitt. At one point they were playing together, so Pitt is favored by 7.5. The total here is 52. Brady, we'll start with you.
Yeah, they're actually both former USC quarterbacks, right? Keaton Slovis, JT Daniels. Although the transfer portal has now allowed us to get to a point in college football where, look, I think it's a good thing, by the way. This makes the backyard brawl that much better. It's already a great rivalry, so I'm looking forward to that. But now the fact you get 2 former USC quarterbacks squaring off versus one another and JT Daniels in his 3rd stop, I love it. Love everything about this. So, look, Pitt's got to feel a little bit slighted. by the fact that Jordan Addison left after a tremendous season last year, and he really was their best player. But look, they bring back a strong defense. Keenan Slovis is very capable, along with an offensive line that returns to help protect them in a rushing attack. So Pitt's going to be a good football team this year. I think this game's going to be close, though, Danny. I really do. I like JT Daniels and Graham Harrell reuniting. Obviously, JT knows the system. Sam James is a big-time playmaker. He's going to make some plays in this one. The hook here killed me. I think at 7, I kind of was probably going to stay away from it, but I'm going to go ahead and take the 7.5 points here in West Virginia. I think it should be a close game.
I love this game. I grew up on this game. My dad graduated from the University of Pittsburgh, hail to Pitt, and it's good to see this backyard brawl back on the national stage. I'm on the other side. I don't know if I got to find a way to cut into this deficit I'm looking at, but here's why. Pat Narduzzi is one of the better coaches in the ACC who has been consistently delivering with winners, nonstop. And Neil Brown, I would say his seat is mildly warm at West Virginia. Hasn't been the best debut the last few years. He makes a change at offensive coordinator, goes to JT Daniels. And there is a change at coordinator at Pitt as well, with Frank Cignetti coming in for the departed Mark Whipple, which is another reason why I like Pitt laying the 7.5. But you know what I like even better? The under in this game. The reason why Mark Whipple left, and Pat Narduzzi is pretty vocal about this, he wanted to run the football. He likes that old school smash mouth running game. And I think Pitt's defense will slow down JT Daniels and Graham Harrell, the offensive coordinator. No more Letty Brown. The offensive line is there, but they lost a lot of their wide receiving talent. I think it'll be a lower scoring affair, but I'm going to go ahead and lay the points with the Pitt Panthers and take the under as well.
We can agree upon that. It's going to be a dogfight. It's going to be a low-scoring game, Danny, so I'm with you on under as well.
All right, both like the under there. Let's go to Central Michigan at 12th ranked Oklahoma State, 18th season for Mike Gundy. The Pokes went 12-2 last season. They lost to Baylor in the Big 12 championship. They are getting 21 here. The total is 60.
Yeah, just a few inches short. So otherwise, who knows what happens in the college football playoff and with the Big 12. With Oklahoma State winning it. Look, the bottom line is, Oklahoma State is built to compete within the Big 12 this year. You got Spencer Sanders coming back. Obviously, they're going to have their passing attack. They always have had that under Mike Gundy, and a balanced rushing attack. My question is more about the defense. I mean, this was one of the top defenses in college football last year with Jim Knowles as their defensive coordinator. He moves on from Ohio State, and with him, they lose 4 of their leading tacklers. So this is a game where, when I look at how these two teams match up, Oklahoma State is going to win. They're clearly the better team between the two. But I do think Central Michigan can keep it close. Lou Nichols led the nation in rushing last year in regards to yards per game. And look, their veteran quarterback, Daniel Richardson, has played a lot of football. And they do have one of the best secondaries in the MAC. So I'm going to go ahead and take the 21 points here in Central Michigan. And this is also a game that I think between Central Michigan wanting to run the football, shorten the amount of possessions Oklahoma State gets, I like the under in this play too, Danny.
I love the under. Oklahoma State's last 9 games in the month of September, the under has hit 7-1-1. You mentioned Lou Nichols. I was going to hit you guys with a trivia question and see if you knew who led the country in rushing. As a freshman, I'll remind you, Lou Nichols was last year. I'm with you on the side, too. I think Jim McElwain and the Chippewas come in. I think this is their Super Bowl. I think Oklahoma State wins the game. But I think they're a little more methodical, too. Spencer Sanders isn't the type of quarterback who's going to go out there, and they're not the Oklahoma State of old who's going to chuck it all over the yard. They'll be a little bit more methodical. And I do think Derek Mason was a very good fill-in. When you lost Jim Knowles, they went to the SEC and brought in Derek Mason to run the defense for Mike Gundy there in Stillwater. So I like the under here as well, because I think you'll see a little bit more of a smash mouth affair. And because it'll be low scoring, I think it stays inside that number. So I'll take the 21 points, too.
One other thing, too, Oklahoma State has had the propensity to get off to some slow starts to start the season. They had a slow start versus Missouri State last year. And then if you recall, going back to the Central Michigan game, 4 or 5 years ago, whenever it was, losing on the Hail Mary at the very end of that one. So, Cooper Rush in particular, that just got released today from the Dallas Cowboys. But the reality is that Hail Mary play will live in infamy in Stillwater for the way it went down. So don't count out Central Michigan to keep this one close, and Oklahoma State having to distance themselves in the second half.
Those games on Thursday. Let's hop over to Friday. We get Western Michigan at 15th ranked Michigan State. Third season under Mel Tucker. Most notable departure for them, Kenneth Walker III, now off to the NFL here. Michigan State favored by 22. The total is 54. Danny, we'll start with you.
So I look at this one. Kenneth Walker III, no doubt a rough loss, but it's easier to replace a running back than a quarterback. And you got Peyton Thorne back, who had a really nice season last year for Sparty. 27 touchdowns, just 10 interceptions. Big reason why they went 11-2. I think people are looking at this Michigan State team to see if Mel Tucker can live up to that $95 million contract. I think he can. But I still like Western Michigan. Similar to what we were talking about Oklahoma State, this is just a big number in week 1. I know it's in East Lansing, but Western Michigan was 3-1 against the spread in non-conference games last season. I think they'll hang around. And I also like the over. Last season, Michigan State, 7 of their games hit the total, went over the total. The secondary is a little bit shaky. I think Western Michigan could exploit that. So I'm going to hit the over and Western Michigan.
You know, I'm with you on the over, Danny. I do think that's one of the good plays in this particular matchup, but I just have a hard time betting on Western Michigan and not really knowing what to expect. They have to replace 3 starters on the offensive line. That's never good versus an experienced Michigan State defense that's coming back. That was one of the better defenses getting pressure versus opposing quarterbacks, and that's one of the staples for Mel Tucker within that defense. Now, obviously, look, the secondary was atrocious last year for Michigan State. They were, in fact, the worst in all of FBS. The reality is, though, Western Michigan, they're breaking a new quarterback in Jack Salopek. So how is that really going to play itself out? I don't think it's going to. And so I think you talked about that rushing attack from Michigan State. They're going to hang the hat on Jarek Broussard, who's a transfer, and Jalen Berger, also a transfer who's come in to help take over or fill in that big void left behind in Kenneth Walker. And you mentioned Peyton Thorne. You're going to see a lot of him to Jaden Reed this year. That's going to be the connection that I think they look to go to and often in this game. So I'm going to lay the points from Michigan State, but I do like the over here.
3 down, quite a few to go here as we work our way through week 1, the ranked games. Let's recap what we've got so far. They both like the under in West Virginia at Pitt. Lock Unity for Central Michigan and the under there, and they both like the over for Western Michigan at Michigan State. Coming up, we've got the most talked about game for week 1, Notre Dame at Ohio State. Marcus Freeman says, you know what, I'm not insulted by that 17.5-point spread. We'll get picks for that game and more next. Welcome back. Week 1 of college football is here. That means your Saturdays can now be dedicated to nothing but college football there. A couple games we're taking a look at there. Oregon going up against Georgia. Georgia's former defensive coordinator, Dan Lanning, now the head coach at Oregon. That's interesting. But maybe the one a lot of us are talking about, Notre Dame at Ohio State. Ohio State favored by 17.5. What does new head coach Marcus Freeman with Fighting Irish have to say about that?
Well, I didn't know that. I'm going to write that down. You said 17.5 points, right? We'll use that in the team meeting today, you know. It's good to know. You know, I haven't paid much attention to the spread.
Brady Quinn, Danny Kanell. Brady, we'll start with you.
Yeah, and actually that line opened at 13. It's gone up to 17.5. So there's no doubt these are the sorts of things you use as bulletin board material when you go into it. But make no mistake about it, okay? Columbus for a night game to start the season versus a big opponent like Notre Dame will be like unlike any atmosphere I think honestly this entire roster of Notre Dame is going to experience throughout the course of their career. It will be that tough. It will be that unique. The thing about it is, it's not like we haven't seen Ohio State lose some of their non-conference games early in the season. We watched it last year versus Oregon. Oregon, who was playing without some of its best players, in particular Kayvon Thibodeau, who came right in with a more physical team, made the adjustments necessary, and ran it right down their throat. So that's really the challenge, I think, for Notre Dame in this matchup, is they're going to have to figure out a way of controlling the line of scrimmage, both offensively and defensively, which is saying a lot. But if you go back to last year for Ohio State, they struggled in rush defense. In fact, they were a large departure from what they were in previous years, especially when you look at their losses, where they gave up a combined 566 yards in their losses. And that doesn't include over 200 yards to open the season to Minnesota last year, over 200 yards in the Rose Bowl to Utah. This is a team that struggled to stop the run, and it's why they've brought in defensive coordinator Jim Knowles. So you're going to see Notre Dame want to hammer away running the football and not put too much on Tyler Buckner's shoulders in his first start. And defensively, I think it's bend but don't break. You know, don't give up that big play. Keep hanging around. See if you'll get C.J. Stroud to make a mistake, and then stop Travion Henderson. And then don't allow them to beat you two ways. So that's the game plan. I think Notre Dame's very capable of doing it. This spread, to be quite honest, it's outright disrespectful for what this team's done the past 5 years. So I'm going ahead and taking the points here. And don't be surprised if they don't pull off a big upset. We've seen Oregon do it in recent years. We've seen Oklahoma do it in recent years, where Baker Mayfield's planting a flag in an artificial turf that wouldn't stand up. But we won't get into that. That's more to do with the Oklahoma education. So
Wow.
I mean,
shots,
how long do you think he
man.
was preparing that? You think he prepared that whole spiel this morning, Danny?
That was great. I think he did. He got a hype video ready to send up there to South Bend for his squad. I hate the number. I really do. I'm on the other side. I'm going to lay the points, but I don't love it. I don't feel very confident in it. It's one of those ones where what are you going to get? And Brady brought up some great points. I mean, this team did get pushed around last year by the more physical teams like Oregon, like Michigan in a rivalry game. And I think Notre Dame will try to push them around. I think they'll try to bring that physicality into Columbus because there's one great way to stop C.J. Stroud and Travion Henderson and that slew of wide receivers is to keep them off the field, especially when you've got a quarterback at making his first start in the road. So I actually like the under in this one better. If you remember last year, early in the season, Minnesota, Ohio State sputtered a little bit. There's a continuity, and there are two receivers who were drafted in the first round who are no longer there. I think you could see that sputter a little bit. So I'm on the under because I think Notre Dame will try to play that ball control. They'll try to get physical. I do think Ohio State's defense will be better, and I think it could be a little bit more of a slugfest, a typical Big Ten type of matchup. So I'm going to take the under in this one. I think there's maybe a late touchdown in there that puts Ohio State over the edge, or maybe a pick six if Notre Dame finds themselves late in the game trying to, come back. But I really like the under in this one better than anything.
I think a couple interesting points, Danny, and really carrying off of that is when we talk about shortening a game, a lot of people think, oh, we're just going to run the football and eat up clock. It's not so much that. It's about, limiting the amount of possessions Ohio State gets. So in a typical game, if Ohio State gets 14 or 15, you're trying to eat up enough clock just to give them 10 or 11. And that's that many less opportunities for a big play to Jackson Smith and Jigba or Marvin Harrison Jr. or whoever else. So that's going to be part of the game plan. The other thing is, if you feel like you're disadvantaged as far as your skill players versus their skill players, you just don't put them on the field. You put in those 2 tight end sets. You put in those 3 tight end sets. You force Ohio State to get big and try to match up with Michael Mayer out in space or try to stop the rushing attack against an offense that's got a better offensive line than you might see the entire season. So it's going to be really interesting to see the X's and O's behind it, because the last thing I'll point out is don't forget, Notre Dame played Oklahoma State in the bowl game. That's Jim Knowles' defense, and that's his scheme. That's now who's taken over at Ohio State. Different personnel, but Tommy Rees, the offensive coordinator at Notre Dame, and Jim Knowles are going to be very familiar with each other from that matchup in the Fiesta Bowl.
Someone who's very familiar with Georgia, now the head coach at Oregon, Dan Lanning there. Those two teams playing one another on Saturday there. Look, Georgia lost a bunch of players to the draft. Their defense is still elite. They have this excellent trio of tight ends there. And I mean, they're just fantastic across the board. Stetson Bennett back. Bulldogs favored by 17. The total here is 53.
This is a really big number, and I think it has a lot to do with the respect that Kirby Smart and his team's getting for being the defending national champions. But you kind of touched on it. I mean, they lost a lot of guys in the first round of the draft. And I know they bring back plenty of talent and ability, whether it's Nolan Smith, Jalen Carter, whoever you want to talk about, Ringo at the cornerback position. And Georgia's actually rotated their defensive players to allow for some of those young players to get experience, to then be able to come in and be ready for their moment like right now. But let's not forget, Dan Lanning, their former defensive coordinator, he knows that scheme as well as anyone. He knows the personnel as well as anyone. And he's going to have an Oregon roster ready to roll. And this roster has been built well by Mario Cristobal, who built them up in the trenches to be able to compete with the likes of some of the top talent, like I just mentioned a moment ago, versus Ohio State. So they'll be a physical team. They'll be able to run the football. Bo Nix at quarterback for Oregon has been in these big situations before and has performed well. So 17 is just too much for me. I'm not saying that Georgia doesn't win this football game, Danny. I'm just going to go ahead and take the points. I think it stays within that number.
Another one, these big numbers scare me, but I'm going to go ahead and take the favorite. And taking all these favorites back to back, I'm like, man, maybe I should have vacillated like you did and gone back and forth on them. But this is in Georgia's backyard, man. This is a home game for him. Dan Lanning's going to come back, and he's going to go right back to where he was. And while he was a great defensive coordinator, he doesn't have those 5 first-round defensive players on his side of the ball. And he does inherit a pretty good roster. Mario Cristobal was a pretty good recruiter. I think Bo Nix will be able to make some plays, which is why my favorite play in this game is the over. It's a 53-point total. I think that's pretty low. Bo Nix We've seen this story before, though. He can make plays like he did against LSU when he's running around for 10 minutes, make some circus play while he's, falling down and hits for a big gainer. I think he'll put up some points on this Georgia defense while they're getting acclimated and breaking in some of these younger players. But I also think you'll see Stetson Bennett open it up a little bit for Georgia's offense, and they'll try to showcase some firepower because, if anything, this Georgia team – last year, they relied so much on their defense. I think they might rely more on their offense early this year with Brock Bowers. Eric Gilbert, the tight end, is one of the better tight ends that they're expecting big things from. So I'm going to say it goes over the 53 total.
I'm with you on the over. I do think this will be a more high-scoring affair compared to where the over-under is set right now. I'm curious to see how Stetson Bennett plays this season. I mean, really, if you go back through the course of last season, they had to rely on that rushing attack. At times, they were almost getting through games, as you mentioned, relying on the defense. And despite of him, national championship game was a completely different story. So is that the version of Stetson Bennett we see this season? Or are we going to start to hear some whispers and rumors that maybe he's the thing holding them back? I kind of get the sense that maybe it's going to be more of that body of work that we saw last year, and maybe that's the position that may hurt them this year with Stetson Bennett, more so than him replicating what we saw in the national championship game.
Another ranked versus ranked game on Saturday. We get number 23 Cincy at number 19 Arkansas. Cincy no longer has Desmond Ritter there. Arkansas, meanwhile, took a huge leap last season. Danny, the Razorbacks favored by 6 in this one. The total is 52.
My favorite line came from Sam Pittman, the head coach at Arkansas. All these coaches try to hide who they're going to start, who's playing. And he said, I love waiting there because he goes, it's like you go to a party. He's like, you invite people over. And he said, there are 2 types of people. He said, one's going to bring iced tea and one's going to bring liquor. And you find out really quickly what kind of people you invited to your party. One of the all-time from a quote machine of Sam Pittman. I think he's going to get somebody who likes to go to this kind of party in Cincinnati. I think this team travels. I liked this so much more when it was over a touchdown. It was at 7.5. Now it's down to 6. But I'm still going ahead and take the Bearcats, even though they lost Desmond Ritter and they haven't named their quarterback. It's going to be Ben Bryant or Evan Prater. This program is built on developing players. They had 9 players drafted last season. I don't think any of them were 5-stars. They were all built from within the program. That's one thing Luke Fickell does. He brings a disciplined team that plays really team football. And you got to remember, Cincinnati's 2 losses the last 2 years came against Georgia and Bama. That's like they are an incredible team. And I'm concerned about the loss of Treylon Burks. That's a big portion of the offense. KJ Jefferson is good. He's solid. But I'm worried about Arkansas, what they do in this matchup. Both of these teams, I think, are going to hang their hat on the defensive side of the ball, which is why I also like the under in this one. I think this will be a little more of a physical scoring affair without Treylon Burks, breaking a new quarterback at Cincinnati. I think it'll be lower scoring. But I like the Bearcats getting the 6 and the under.
I don't like the spread in this one. It's been tough, especially as much as it's gotten knocked down. It's given me more questions than anything else, and I've wavered between it. I do like the under. I think you're right. I think both teams, it's going to be a physical, low-scoring, knockdown, drag-out fight. But Cincinnati's just lost so much. And I think this is going to be that year where you really learn to appreciate what you lost in Desmond Ritter as their quarterback, who was successful for his entire tenure at Cincinnati. That amongst Jerome Ford at running back, Alec Pierce at wide receiver, 7 starters on defense, including Sauce Gardner. Look, I know they develop. I know they bring guys up from within. They've done a good job recruiting. The reality is it's different at Cincinnati. You don't have the same type of depth. I just talked about Georgia and how they'll rotate in some of those young players throughout the course of the season, not so much as starters, but to get them playing time for when they are starters. Cincinnati doesn't do that. They play all their guys because they have to. They don't have the same type of depth as an SEC school like Arkansas. So if you're asking me who I'm going to lay the points on here, it's KJ Jefferson, the returning quarterback, who I think burst on the scene now and showcase what they're capable of. Donovan Johnson in the backfield with Raheem Sanders as well. He's going to be part of that. And don't forget, yeah, they lose Treylon Burks. They do get Jaden Hazelwood, a former Oklahoma wide receiver who's got some big playability. So don't be surprised if they don't rely on him for some big plays downfield.
Good ranked games on Saturday. Let's recap their picks for those. Complete opposite sides when it comes to Notre Dame at Ohio State. Brady likes the Irish to cover and the over. Danny going with the Buckeyes and the under. They both agree on the over for Oregon at Georgia, and agreement again on the total for Cincinnati at Arkansas. Take the under there. Coming up next, we head to the SEC and the Pac-12. Alabama opening up their season against the Mountain West champs. Also, Ole Miss, USC, and Kentucky, all teams with high expectations. We'll go over those games next. Welcome back into CBS Sports HQ, going through week 1 games here. Let's go through the SEC and Pac-12 here. Alabama Crimson Tide hosting Utah State here. Danny, you've talked about how you're a little afraid of those big numbers, and we were talking about 17.5, and you didn't like that. What about Alabama, 41.5 point favorite at home? The total here is 62.5.
I hate this game. I don't know why you would touch this game with a 10-foot pole, but since our producer Jack is making us pick it, I'll go ahead and take those points. All right, 41.5 is a lot. Alabama, the favorite to win the national championship. I think this will be a very businesslike win for Alabama. But here's what I'm concerned about. Logan Bonner, 11-2 Utah State come to town. Logan Bonner is a gunslinger. Like, he runs around. I could see him playing in the second half, running around, making some plays versus Alabama's backups. I think you'll see a healthy dose of Alabama's backups trying to run out the clock late. So I'm going to say this is a backdoor cover. Blake Anderson coming to town. Utah State was sloppy versus UConn. And one of the reasons I think they were sloppy was because they were looking for this game. I think this will be one of their Super Bowl opportunities to go and try to shock the world. I don't think they do, clearly, but I'll go ahead and take the 41.5 points. And I think it'll be under. I think it'll be under the 62.5 total. I just think, again, a very business-like win for the Alabama Crimson Tide.
I'm with you on Utah State. I'm going to go ahead and take the points, too, here, in part because, I think Alabama's going to be looking at that matchup next week in week 2 in the second half when they're all big, saying we don't need to subject Bryce Young and Will Anderson and all our studs to potential injury. We've got to go to Austin and actually play a road game for once, non-conference, not on a neutral site. I know this is new for Nick Saban, but that's what they actually have to do in week 2. So I think they're going to rest some of those guys third, fourth quarter once they build this huge league. And as Danny talked about, that's where you see the Logan Bonner effect, that backdoor cover, where if they are down big, they start to get some points back. I do like the over on this one, though. I think Alabama's going to put up a pretty big number. I mean, if UConn, who has really struggled in football for the past 5 years or so, can put up almost 200 yards rushing on you just in the first half, that's a troubling sign for your rush defense. So I don't care if Utah State was overlooking UConn for Alabama. That's a problem. Jahmyr Gibbs is going to go off in this game, and I think Alabama is going to be able to roll relatively early. So I like the over, but I'm going to go ahead and take the 41.5 points.
Let's talk about Miami, Ohio at Kentucky here. Kentucky looking for back-to-back 10-win seasons. As the season rolls along, we'll talk about Will Levis during all of that. Don't want to overlook Miami, Ohio quarterback Brett Gabbert, though, setting a lot of records last season in the MAC here. So Kentucky favored by 16. The total is 52.5, Danny.
Yeah, brother of Blaine Gabbert out there at the helm for Miami of Ohio, and he is a pretty good quarterback. Frank Martin in his 9th year as the head coach there. They are the preseason favorite to win their division in the MAC. I actually like them with the number. Kentucky, it opened at 21. It's been going down all the way to 16 in large part because we knew there were going to be some player suspensions announced. Chris Rodriguez out. Cavassier Smoke steps in. You also have Jordan Wright on the defensive side of the ball suspended. Several players for Kentucky out of this one. Will Levis comes in with those massive expectations on his shoulders as quarterback for Kentucky, but he is breaking in a new offensive coordinator, and he doesn't have Wan'Dale Robinson, his favorite target for last year. I think Kentucky has enough to win, but I think this will stay inside that 16. And if you've watched Kentucky play the last few years, you know they play physical on the defensive side of the ball, and they like to run the football. So I'm going to take the under as well. So give me Miami in the under.
We're in complete lock unity here. I like Miami getting the 16 points. Love that. I do think Brett Gabbert will be able to, at some point in this game, maybe it's a backdoor cover, but he'll be able to put up some numbers, too, throwing the football around. And he's been one of the more prolific passers we've seen in the MAC in quite some time. Talking about Will Levis, though, this is the beginning, though, of him demonstrating why he will be a top 10 pick after this upcoming season. Even without Wan'Dale Robinson, they'll be able to overcome that. But this is a game where I'm not saying Kentucky's overlooking Miami of Ohio by any means. I just think Miami of Ohio is going to be able to hang around in this one, but I also like the under given the style of play of Kentucky. Just wanted to get out from this non-conference game, get the win, and move forward.
Troy at number 21, Ole Miss, according to our partners at 24/7 Sports. Lane Kiffin bringing in the second best transfer class in the nation there. Ole Miss a 21.5 point favorite. The total, Brady, is 58.
Yeah, and I like the over for this one. It feels like Lane Kiffin probably wants to make a statement with the way he likes to do this thing. I mean, he went and hit the transfer portal hard. Jackson Dart enters in as quarterback now. You look at Zach Evans, running back now that came through the transfer portal. He's going to go off in this game, in my opinion. I think he's going to be one of the more underrated players this year that we don't realize the type of impact he's going to have for Ole Miss being a sleeper in the SEC West. So he's got some big shoes to fill in Snoop Connor, but I think he's very capable of doing so. So the reality is, I like Ole Miss. It's a big number. I hate the hook here. but I'm willing to lay it. There's just too many question marks for me with Troy and what they have coming back, having to go up against an Ole Miss defense with an all-ACC safety like A.J. Finley returning, as well as some others.
Amanda, one of two things going to happen. Like, Brady's either going to separate his lead or I'm going to cut into it because I'm on opposite sides of both of this one. I love the hook because I think Ole Miss probably wins by 3 touchdowns, which would get you a cover if you take Troy. Troy, their defense was awesome last year. Their offense, not so much. They were 109th in total offense last year. They were atrocious. So I think they'll struggle to score points against Ole Miss. And I do think with a new offensive coordinator, with a new quarterback, and all of these transfers, I think you could see some growing pains and some struggles early in this game, just figuring things out. I think they'll pull away late and be really close to that number. But I think it hits the under on the total, too. As much as we think about Ole Miss as this high-scoring, high-flying offense, the totals are usually set so high. 8 of Ole Miss's games last year hit the under. So I'm going to go ahead and take the under on this one, Troy versus Ole Miss, and I'll take Troy in the points.
Total opposite sides there. A game a lot of people are talking about, Utah, which is coming in preseason ranked 7th at Florida here. The Pac-12 champs are the favorite on the road by 3. A lot of people feel like Florida is being way overlooked in this game. The total is 21. Danny, go with you.
So I look at this game, and I do think people are overlooking Florida. I love that it's at a full field goal. That's where we're at. Yeah, I'm just making sure the number's there because it was at 2.5. And I do think this game will be tight. I think it'll be low scoring. But I think Florida is more than capable of handling Utah. Kyle Whittingham's been trying to do some very unique things. He's been turning up the heat at their indoor practice facility. He's been like laying water out there to try to replicate the humidity that you're going to get at the swamp. I don't think they know what they're in for when it comes to the heat and humidity of Gainesville, in the dead. Even though it's a later game at night, I still think that heat will catch up to them. And I do think that Billy Napier inherited a really good roster. Not great, but Dan Mullen got run off because he wasn't top 2 or 3 in recruiting. He was still top 10 every year. Anthony Richardson at quarterback could be special. And if you look at what Billy Napier did last season with Levi Lewis, I think he'll create a similar offense, utilize Anthony Richardson's insane athleticism, kind of be a little more controlled, physical at the point of attack. And I think they could be running into a brick wall into Utah's defense. And I think Utah also, with Tavion Thomas, who had 21 rushing touchdowns, a school record, I think they could struggle somewhat to move the ball up and down the field against the Gators defense in a hostile environment. I think this is a close game. I'll take Florida, the points, and the under.
I'm with you on taking Florida here. I think 3 points as a home underdog, it makes all the sense in the world. I think Florida's actually going to win this one outright. But I do like the over. I think there'll be more scoring than people realize. Cam Rising really gave this offense a lift last year, along with Tavion Thomas, the freshman running back from Utah. We know the style of play from Utah. Traditionally, the type of team wants to pound away, run the football, a lot of gap schemes, power blocking. It's seldom seen in college football anymore. Florida will be prepared for this, all right? Billy Napier's been one of the more successful coaches now. We just don't know him on the major college football level, looking as far as a Power 5 coach. We're about ready to find out. This university has invested into this coaching staff, this position. You're going to be hard pressed to find a university that has a bigger staff than Billy Napier's there. Danny touched on Anthony Richardson. I think this could be his coming out party for him because honestly, a lot of this scheme is going to really force him to keep the football or make a play or make a big throw downfield in one-on-one opportunities because that's what Utah likes to do. They're going to stack the box, stop the run, force you to beat him one-on-one on the outside. That doesn't play to Utah's advantage. Florida has the better athletes on the outside, more speed on the outside. Go ahead and lay the 3 points. I don't think you need them. I think Florida wins this one outright. A little bit higher scoring game. But again, the fact that Florida's an underdog to start the season in the swamp, I honestly think it's more telling about what Kyle Whittingham has been able to do with this Utah program than maybe more so where Florida's at this point. I think it's more of a compliment to Utah.
A lot of chatter around that game. Finally, we're going to take a look at Rice at USC. We are finally going to get to see how Lincoln Riley, Caleb Williams, Jordan Addison, it all comes together. I have family ties at Rice. I don't love that they have to go on the road and face USC to begin the season there. The Trojans favored by 33 and a hook. The total 61.5. What do we see in this game?
A lot of offense from USC. I mean, Rice has really been down. Your family probably knows as well as anyone else. I don't think they're going to put up much of a fight in this one. So it's a big number, but I'm willing to lay the the 33.5 points. I think Lincoln Riley and USC want to make a statement. A lot of talk, a lot of chatter about the way they've constructed this roster. None of that matters now. Now is the opportunity to go between the lines, go play it out. They've got one of the best quarterbacks in the country who's going to be a Heisman candidate, and arguably the best wide receiver in Jordan Addison, at least he was last year, to go on with a bunch of other talent at their skill positions. The biggest question mark for USC is their defense. Alex Grinch now is their DC. I think they're going to be much improved, and I don't think Rice really presents a threat. So lay the 33.5 points here, and this number goes on the over really because of USC scoring. I mean, they really could drop 60 on Rice at this point. Maybe Rice gets a field goal or touchdown maybe at some point.
It's so bad.
Yeah, you should.
I know.
I'm with you on the over. All these offensive weapons that Lincoln Riley brought with him, a couple from Oklahoma and quarterback and receiver, Jordan Addison, the Fred Biletnikoff winner, and an offensive mind that knows how to call up plays. They're going to score a lot of points. So I love the over. I'm a little bit more nervous. I took Rice in the points. I don't love that side. 9 of Rice's 12 games last year went over the total, which tells me they're not going to be great on the defensive side of the ball again. I'm very curious to see what USC looks like defensively. I wonder if they could give up a touchdown or two sloppily, with some of the backups in later in the game. So I took Rice in the points, but I'm with you on the over on this one in lockstep.
I'm going to wear my Rice shirt in solidarity on Saturday, just for fun.
After I switch out of my... I mean, is that where the game's going to be over after the first quarter.
These Oklahoma fans, Brady, these Oklahoma fans are so mad at
nice.
They'll root for anybody.
I'm just saying.
Oh my gosh, on both sides. And I asked to do the show with you people.
You're not going to want to watch after the first quarter.
Holy cow. Let's recap their picks. How about that? As we go through this, as I am getting bullied over here, they both like Utah State to cover. Lock unity when it comes to Miami, Ohio, and the under. Total opposite sides. Ole Miss and Troy both say take Florida, and they agree at least on the over Rice at USC. Welcome back into CBS Sports HQ. Final couple of ranked games here for week 1. We get number 24 Houston at UTSA. Look, I love UTSA. Love what they did last season. Cougs favored by 4. Total here is 61 and a hook. Danny, we'll go with you.
Too many points. UTSA, Jeff Traylor. This team takes a lot of pride. There were great atmospheres there last year at the Dome. I think you'll see a sellout crowd or close to it. I think Houston, if they overlook this team at all, they could be in trouble for the outright upset. And I love the over in this game. I think you'll see a high-scoring affair with Clayton Tune back at quarterback for Houston. Frank Harris back at quarterback for UTSA. They lose Sincere McCormick, their running back, but he is a running threat in his own. So give me UTSA and give me the over in this one, even though it is at 61.5.
Oh, Danny, I love the over. I'm right there with you. They lose Sincere McCormick. They do get Traylon Smith, the running back transfer from Arkansas. So he should add to that backfield, that offensive attack. Here's the mismatch, though. Houston's wide receivers versus the DBs for UTSA on the outside. I think that's where Clayton Tune's going to be able to make enough big plays to cover this number. So, yes, the over hits, but I'm going to lay the 4 points here with Houston.
BYU coming in at number 25 at South Florida. BYU's final season as an independent before they joined the Big 12 here. They do have 12 points on the roads at South Florida. The total here is 58. What do you think?
Well, I think it's going to be a higher scoring affair in part because BYU is going to kind of burst the scene and put up a lot of points. I don't have much anticipation for USF, even though Jerry Bohannon, now the transfer from Baylor, takes over as their starting quarterback. He'll be able to run the football and make some plays. The reality is this is all about Jaron Hall and this offense for BYU and how they built up this year from what is honestly, to me, kind of a low ranking. I thought they'd be ranked higher than what they are at 25, but this is a defense that's got experience on it. I don't foresee USF really hanging around in this one. So I'm going to go ahead and lay the points with BYU, and I feel pretty confident it's going to hit that over.
Amanda, we need some sort of graphic because we have Lock Unity, but we also have Lock Wars. We need like 2 tanks going together like this.
I like it.
We're on opposite sides again. Similar line of thinking. I don't think these teams coming from Utah at altitude know what they're getting into when they come down to Florida and go to Tampa and have to play in that heat and humidity, in early September where you are still in the summer doldrums. BYU, I think, is a great squad. They're returning more production than anybody else in the country. But Jeff Scott slowly has been getting a little bit better, gets Gary Bohannon in to play quarterback for him. I think they'll be up for the task. And I'm going to say the under hits here as well. So 2 total opposite sides here from me and Brady.
Yet again, it is time for your Week 1 worry-free pick presented by Zevo. Danny, I'm not sure, since you've exhibited a lot of worry throughout
is this really a worry-free pick?
Is this truly worry-free for you?
Yeah, it's worry-free because I feel good about it. I feel great about it. I'm going to go to New Orleans, and I'm going to take my Seminoles coming off of that beatdown from Duquesne. Do you know how long it's been that Florida State has had a worry-free week 1 win? It's been 7 years or something like that. They have not had, and I know it's Duquesne, I know it's an FCS program, but there was a confidence and identity that I think this team finds that they will bring to New Orleans in a hostile environment. Brian Kelly hasn't named a starter. I don't think they knew. I think it is a very true competition. I think Florida State's defensive line can slow down that offense. Give me the Noles with the points and even to win the game outright. Don't even worry about it.
I don't know if I see this one happening. Danny. As much as I was upset about the departure of Brian Kelly and the way he did it to LSU, I don't know. I think they're getting a win here, buddy. My apologies. But here's my worry-free pick. Florida Gators. Yes, you're giving up 3 at home. You go ahead and take those points because you will keep this one close, if not outright win, as I said earlier. Don't worry about it. This is a big game, I think, for the Pac-12. Really, Utah is carrying the flag, carrying the banner for them based on their success of winning the conference last year. But I think it's going to get off to a bad start. This is a mismatch as far as you're looking at these two rosters with the talent and skill on the outside. And I think you're going to see Anthony Richardson start to make a case for why he's one of the more special players in all of college football. So take those 3 points in Florida, but you won't have to worry about it. You might want to bet the money line as well.
Those picks presented by Zevo, people-friendly, bug-deadly. Okay, Lock Unity picks. There were not a lot in this particular round on week 1. Only 3 of them, but at least you guys do agree totally on 3. There they are, Central Michigan and the under.
Gosh, some big spreads
only
too.
3. You guys had 6, Brady, but you decided to dive more into your work.
I said this before, I'll say it on air. I was indecisive on some other picks, and I thought to myself, I'm going to bet the way I need to bet because if I lose, I know why. If I end up winning, then I'll be like, okay, I'm glad I won that. Otherwise, I would have felt a little frustrated with myself for the way I bet those. So I switched back to saying, hey, this is how I think the game's going to play out. It should play out this way.
Oh, no. This is the official start of
who's
week
ready?
1.
Come on.
Oh, my God.
I don't know if we get in trouble if you're like, right.
Are they even on TV? Is that game televised?
It doesn't matter because we'll just tune in. Like Daniel set up a little camera. We'll just watch him the whole time, right?
Let's go. Let's do it. Big game Sunday night.
Good luck to your Seminoles. Good luck to my Sooners. Good luck to your Fighting Irish. We'll see how week 1 plays out for all of those teams there. Recapping their final picks there. Was there Lock Unity in any of this? Not really, but they do like the over when it comes to Houston at UTSA. Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.